Greetings and welcome to prompt number 25 of Inktober. Today's prompt is prickly. So, since this prompt is prickly, I thought of succulents, kind of like a cactus. There are others that have like small prickly bits on them, but I'm not really familiar with their names, sorry. I guess I'm just not very educated when it comes to succulents. I usually grow plants that I can eat, like basil, thyme. I grew some chili peppers once. I know succulents have become pretty popular. My daughter had a few a while ago and she killed them. I also grew up with some aloe. Like my mom would always keep an aloe plant nearby because of its healing properties. Anyway, I know that it's pretty common lately for them to be drawn with some pretty girls, to have like a cute girl surrounded by plants. Plants are pretty calming to me and I like them, but I'm not really the type to draw the pretty girl bust surrounded by flowers, or in this case succulents, but I considered it because I thought it would fit the prompt without just drawing succulents, and I thought maybe this would be something out of my comfort zone, something new. I mentioned before that I brainstormed ideas just by doing some word association with the prompts in preparation for Inktober. Since prickly was towards the end, I still had 4 or 5 that I got stumped on, so I just left them blank. So I didn't really have any other ideas, unfortunately, so I just thought I'd roll with it. When I was looking at preferences, it reminded me that I had just doodled my fan original character, which is Makoto-san, holding a bunch of succulents. Makoto is Sailor Jupiter from Sailor Moon, and I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to draw him. I haven't really decided what to name him, by the way, and I've just been calling him Mako just as a placeholder since his mother's name was Makoto. But I was considering naming him after one of Jupiter's moons, one of them being Io, because it had a lot of volcanic activity, which would suit his personality, and it orbits closest to Jupiter, kinda like a mama's boy. The other is Leda, which sounds close to Leda, her English dub name, but I like how Io fits more to his character, just Leda was easier to say. Although Io makes me think of Ai, which is love in Japanese, and I thought that might fit too. I think I mentioned a while back that one of my favorite characters in anime is Makoto from Sailor Moon, and that she served as an inspiration for my first original character, Zoven, or Max at the time. I drew her a few times when I was young, but as I got older and started working on my own comic, she kind of fell by the wayside. And I don't really draw a lot of fan art even nowadays, but recently I've been drawing a lot more Chibiusa. I think I even just drew Hotaru, Sailor Saturn, but I kind of felt bad because my favorite character is Sailor Jupiter, and yet I haven't drawn her in years. But I have read the Sailor Moon Materials Collection side story thing, which I think takes place in a parallel universe. It's never explicitly stated. It was interesting, and I liked the idea that they all moved on. The Inner Senshi actually found love and were able to start families. It wasn't just Usagi and Mamoru, but it kind of bothered me that they were basically just clones of the Inner Senshi. Like, Chibiusa, at the very least, has kind of her own look, whereas these girls look exactly like their mothers. To a T, like they could be twins. It just looks like a clone. And it's just a side story, just something fun that was added to the collection materials, just as a bonus, and Naoko probably didn't even really give it too much thought. I think it's some fan theory that basically producing a clone type of being is just how the race procreates, and that's why there isn't a King of the Moon. And I think at some point, Queen Serenity even mentioned something that implies she was surprised or thankful to have been able to produce a daughter. Like it was something difficult or rare. I forget the actual wording, don't take my word for it. I did a deep dive a while back into the fandom and I couldn't tell you where I ended up or where I got it from. But regardless, I thought it would have been interesting to see another generation of Sailor Senshi, or even just a group of Senshi based on the Galilean moons that orbit Jupiter. But I got the idea that Makoto would have a son, and that he would take after her heavily. I think, actually, in the live-action version, she marries the guy who runs the arcade, and they kind of look similar anyway. But anyway, this is my Sailor Moon fan original character, Makoto-san. He really likes plants, succulents in particular, which is why I thought of him for this prompt. He takes martial arts like his mother, and enjoys baking and cooking. I've actually been doodling him quite a bit in my sketchbook, and he's actually the first OC on my list of characters that need a character sheet. Up until recently, I wasn't really big on fan art. I felt like it would influence my style too much, and I kind of wanted to try to avoid that. Even when I was younger, when I first started getting serious into drawing, my main focus was that I wanted to develop my own style because I wanted to make my own comic. It's only been in the past year or so that I've really started drawing fan art. For the longest time, I couldn't even get inspired to draw fan art, which is another reason I just never did. I had a lot of anime and series that I liked, but it just for some reason never occurred to me to try to draw those characters or take my own spin on them or anything like that. I don't have anything against fan art or those who draw it. While original creations are great, some of my favorite artists I've found because of fan art that they've drawn. I'm familiar with the character, and seeing someone else's interpretation on them can be really intriguing and inspiring. Frequently, I end up following these artists because their original content is equally, if not more, intriguing. Basically, I feel like fan art is like saying you like a thing, and it acts like a beacon to others who like that thing too, and it brings them together. I think as long as something inspires you, you should act on it. It's always satisfying to create something on your own, especially when you have a story to tell and people enjoy that story. But not everyone likes making their own characters, and some find it hard or just don't want to write. So even though I have a few stories I'm working on and have been inspired to make my own stories since I was very little, I'm not confident in my writing ability, and I feel like I could never finish some of them. I also have a hard time creating characters that I think are intriguing or eye-catching. I enjoy doing it, but I also understand why others might not. I kind of experimented with cool gray for the background because my Copics are starting to dry out. At first I wasn't too happy with how it came out since the majority of the colors are neutral, and then there's this cool gray block behind him, but I really liked it after everything settled down. I don't know how it will sit with me for the last few prompts to be a little bit more varied in color scheme, but I might not have a choice. I really like the way the succulents and the plants came out. I've never really drawn them, so this was quite an experience. I thought since he's Makoto's son, he would probably share her love of plants, having grown up helping his mother with her own garden, so this could be part of his morning or evening routine. He can sit and have a cup of tea or coffee and tend to his plants, even though succulents don't typically need a lot of tending to. I use the steam or the aroma of his drink to break up the negative area in the background behind him, and it also makes it easier to color with the marker and avoid excessive streaking. I try to bring in some Jupiter references with the Jupiter glyph on his cup, as well as making one of the planners a little Artemis, just to tie this to the Sailor Moon series without it looking too much like fan art. Overall, I really like the way this one came out. Part of it because there is actually a lot of detail going on, and the others because I've been really anxious to draw this character. I am enjoying Inktober, but I want to draw other things. I want to draw unprompted, and I haven't had time to draw anything else this Inktober. And if I did have free time, I kind of needed to let my wrist relax. So it was nice to draw him instead of a random character. So last year I did Ooktober with my original characters Usabel and Corinne as a way to get familiar with drawing them since they're still pretty new, and I keep making alterations to their designs the more I draw them. As an example, Usabel's headphone ears. So I figured this would be a good way to get them fleshed out in my mind. It was difficult for me since some of the prompts just didn't fit the character, and they aren't quite fleshed out well enough for me to adapt them quite yet. Maybe next year I'll do Inktober or Ooktober with only my OCs though. Thank you so much for listening to me geek out and embarrass myself with how much I probably think about Sailor Moon. Be sure to stop by tomorrow as we finish the last stretch of prompts for Inktober. Stretch. Haha, last stretch. And I didn't mean it. Bye.